Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video where we're giving our muscles some nice love after doing workouts and trying to prevent soreness. So this is our third video, and if you missed the first or the second one where we focused on chest, back, and then our shoulders and tricep and bicep areas, I will link those down below so that way you can see those as well and give those areas some love if you find that you're sore. But for today, we are going to be focusing on legs. I know for me, this is an area where I feel like I always end up being sore and tight, especially I think if I'm like running or doing any kind of weightlifting or HIIT workouts. I feel like this area is always tight. So I'm going to be showing you 4 different moves today to help stretch those muscles out. Not just our hamstrings and our calf muscles, but also the quads as well. I think that this is an area that a lot of us really struggle with stretching out and feeling kind of some openness and length. So we will go ahead and get started with those. So if you haven't already, make sure you have your mat rolled out, and we will go ahead and come to a comfortable seat on our mat with our legs out in front of you. So I'm going to be facing you guys. That way you can see, but feel free to sit this way on your mat. This is normally how I would do these stretches. So we're going to start with a yoga pose called janu sirsasana, which is a very long and complicated way of saying just one leg is need a nose stretch. So go ahead and start with your right foot. I'm going to start with my left, that way you are seeing the same way here. And have it stretched out a little bit off to the side, about 45-degree angle from your hip. And then your left leg is going to be bent with the foot touching the thigh. So what I often see whenever I'm teaching this one specifically is that a lot of students will get in this position and then immediately just start reaching for the toes and end up trying to get their head down to their knee to be like, look, I'm really far, my head is almost touching my knee, I'm just really stretching. And while I guess that's okay, by doing that, you're actually missing out on a really nice stretch in the hamstring area. So instead of doing that, we're going to focus on alignment today and make sure that we're getting the best stretch that we can. So before we even stretch while we're sitting here, what I'd like for you to do is check in with your hip socket. Oftentimes we're sitting with our hips tucked under. So the back of our low back here, I'll turn so you can see, our low back is kind of hunched out here. Even in the mid back we're hunched, and that really makes it super difficult to stretch. So what I'd like for you to do instead, if you're doing this, is to just place your hands next to your hips down on the mat, pick up your hips, and like you're bringing that leg into the hip socket, like you're sucking it in, you're just gonna tilt the hips back and sit. The way you're actually sitting on your sit bones versus doing that hunch thing. And that's gonna help us sit up nice and tall and prepare us for the stretch. So that's what we're gonna do first. So go ahead and lift up, pull that leg in towards the hip socket, and then sit back down. That's all that it takes. You might have to move the left foot in a little bit here, but that's gonna get us ready. So then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go for the stretch. So we'll inhale, sitting up nice and tall, lengthening out through the spine. I talked about this in the other videos. And then as we exhale, we'll start to lean forward. And what we're gonna do, instead of trying to reach our head to our knee, which isn't really doing a whole lot, is we're gonna focus on trying to bring the belly to the thigh. So we're really tilting at the hip here, not curving the spine, but lengthening the spine nice and long, and thinking about bringing the stomach to the thigh. Now if it doesn't touch, totally fine. Mine's not touching. It very rarely does. I have to be pretty darn warmed up. But it's just the thought of bringing that closer to your thigh is what we're looking for. So as you're doing that, decide where you want your hands to be. Now, if you can reach your foot, then great, then go for that. Some people will even put a block out here and put their hands around the block. That's totally fine as well. But if that doesn't feel attainable, then don't overdo it and don't overreach and do that hunching thing, because it doesn't necessarily matter. You can place your hands on your shin if you'd like to. You could place them on the mat next to your leg if you want to. Whatever feels good for you right here today. So go ahead and make a decision about where you want your hands. I think I'm going to place mine on the mat next to me for today. And then we're just going to start to lean forward, feeling that stretch back here, probably in your hamstring area, maybe behind the knee a little bit, maybe even the calf. And we're going to focus on our breath while we're doing this stretch. So, like I said, as we were coming into it, with our inhales, we're going to lengthen out through the spine. So we're trying to make sure that our spine is staying nice and long and straight instead of hunched. And then with our exhales, we might find a little bit more space to lean a little bit farther. Maybe not, but maybe. So go ahead and play with that a little bit as we're holding this for about the next 5 breaths or so. So inhale, and exhale, finding some more space. Inhale, lengthen that spine, open the chest up, and then exhale. 2 more breaths here. Okay, so on our next inhale, we'll go ahead and start to walk the hands back up, sitting straight up. And exhale, release. Okay, so that was side number 1, so we'll switch and do the other leg. So you'll bring your left leg out right for me, and right foot will come in to touch left thigh. So again, before we just even do the stretch, let's make sure that our hips are in alignment here. If you're unsure, just pick your hips up and do that kind of sucking in of the leg into the hip socket. And then we know that we're ready. If we can sit up nice and straight, we're good to go. So we'll go ahead and do a nice big inhale first, sitting up nice and straight. And then we'll start to exhale and bend over that leg. Feeling a nice stretch underneath here in the hamstring, probably behind the knee, maybe the calf. And again, deciding where you want your hands to be here. Totally up to you today with your body. And one thing that you might notice is that one side feels very different from the other. I know for me, this side is not nearly as open as my other side. So I tend to struggle with this side a lot more, which can be frustrating, but know that that's totally normal, and we all have a side that we tend to favor and is probably a little more limber and loose. So be gentle with your body, just know that that's normal, and don't try to overdo it. So again, our inhale is going to lengthen our spine out, and then the exhale will help us find some more space. Now if you're in this pose and you start to notice that as you hold it, that the back of your neck here is kind of feeling a little kinky or starting to get tight. Once you've done that intention of having your stomach coming towards your thigh and you know that you're good and you're not trying to do the head to the knee, you can actually go ahead and release the neck. It's totally fine to let it kind of hang a little bit, as long as you're not using your head as a means to get you farther down. That's not going to do you a whole lot of good. So you feel free to go ahead and release the neck. That way it's not getting nice and not nice. It wouldn't feel good. That way it's not getting tight back here, and it's just able to relax a little bit more. That is totally fine. So we'll do about 2 more breaths. Big breaths. And then on our next inhale, we'll start to walk the hands towards the hips and sit up nice and straight. And then exhale, release. Okay, so good job, guys. So that was number 1 for us. We've done both sides. And now we'll move into our second one. So turn for this one. So what we're going to do to get into this one is we're going to put our legs straight out in front of us, and we're going to do a seated forward fold. So the hip alignment that we just went through, we're going to use that same thing for this. So like I said, I often see people in class do this thing where they have their hips tucked under and they want to be up nice and straight on their sit bones. So kind of the same thing. You can place your hands on either side of your hips and just pick them up and then pull back and sit down on your sit bones so you can sit up nice and tall. Now, in seated forward fold, for some people, if you're really tight and you haven't stretched in a while, sitting up straight like this might feel like a stretch. So if that is you, know that that is totally normal, and this can actually be a stretch all on its own. So if you are sitting here and you're feeling it back underneath here, and this feels like a big stretch, then maybe for you today, sitting up nice and straight and tall and focusing on elongating the spine and feeling that stretch underneath in your hamstrings and your calves might be the best thing for you, and that's totally fine. If not, if you are feeling a little more limber and you want to go ahead and do the folding over, we're going to do the exact same thing that we did in our previous one. So you're going to sit up nice and tall on your inhale, and then on your exhale, we'll bend from the hip socket and start to lean forward. Now, if you can't lean forward as much as you did in the first one, again, totally normal. We're doing both legs now instead of one, and they're straight out in front of us. This might be a little bit more difficult for the body. So think about bringing the stomach again to the thighs is what we're looking for here. And then decide where you want your hands. Again, if you can reach your feet and you want to do that, go for it. Totally fine. You can decide different placements depending on how limber you are. Or you can always just place your hands on your shins or on the mat next to you. So you make that call for what feels good today. And then we'll focus on our breath just like we did in the first one. So as we inhale, thinking about lengthening out the spine. And then as we exhale, maybe finding a little more space, being able to creep the hands a little bit farther. And just noticing what that's doing for the body. Again, if you want to release the neck, go for that, totally fine. And as we're in this position, if you start to find that you're really having a lot of strain behind the knee and it's not feeling so good, all you need to do is just bend the knees a little bit. It's totally fine. You can still get a really good stretch by doing a little bit of a bend here, and that might help protect some of those tendons. So don't feel like if you're in a stretch and something doesn't quite feel right, like it's not a stretch, that it's actually hurting, then do something and don't hurt yourself by any means. Either come out of it a little bit, or in this case, bend the knees a little bit, and that'll help. So we'll do about 2 more breaths. Big full breaths here. And then on our next inhale, we'll do the same thing. Start to walk the hands either up the legs or up the mat. So we're standing up nice and tall. And then as we exhale, release and let it go. Okay guys, so that was number 2. So for our third stretch, we're really going to be focusing now on the exterior thigh, so our IT band that runs down that exterior part of our leg, and the glute. I know if I do any kind of leg workouts, most likely my butt is going to end up sore too. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up my right leg here and just bring the knee up towards the ceiling and foot planted on the mat, about knee area on the mat. Now, again, some options here. This might be where you place your foot for today. I'm going to let you decide on what feels right for your body. You can leave it here, or you can cross it over the other leg so it's on the outside of the mat next to the knee. And then we're gonna sit up nice and tall on the inhale. And then as we exhale, we're gonna start to twist towards that knee. And you can either wrap the opposite arm around the knee and then place the hand behind you on the mat. Or if you want to go a little bit farther, you can place the elbow on the outside of the leg here and then start to push the elbow into the leg, and that's going to help you twist just a little bit farther. So, same thing with the breath. Our inhales are going to help us lengthen out the spine. And then on the exhale, you might find that there's a little bit more room to twist. One thing to keep in mind here is that sometimes people want to use their head to kind of guide them. And that's not always the best thing to do for our neck. That might overstrain the neck a little bit. So rather think about leading with the chest, just like we were leading earlier with our stomach to our thigh. We're leading with our chest here and feeling that twist and stretch, using the chest as a guide here. And of course, not only are we stretching out the glutes and the IT band, but we're also getting a nice twist in our back. We'll do one more big breath here. One more inhale. And then as you exhale, we'll untwist and release. Okay, so now we'll do the opposite side. So that leg comes out nice and straight next to the other one. And then we'll bring the opposite foot in, knee towards the ceiling, foot planted on the mat next to the knee. So again, decide what is good for you today. That might be leaving your foot here on this side or crossing it over to the opposite side on the outside of the knee. So we'll go ahead and take a big inhale just like we did on the last time. And then as we exhale, we'll start to twist. Arm is wrapping around the knee. Other arm comes behind us. And I'll turn so I can see you guys. And we're leading with the chest here, allowing the neck to follow the chest lead. And again, you can leave the arm wrapped around, or you can bring it to the inside here and use that motion of pushing against the leg to twist a little bit farther. So using our breath. Using those inhales to lengthen out the spine nice and tall. Then exhaling, maybe finding a little more room to twist. Find that stretch in the back. Do about 2 more breaths here. Take one more inhale, and on the exhale, we'll go ahead and untwist and come back to center, releasing that leg down next to the other one. Okay guys, so that was the third stretch, and now we'll do the fourth and final one for today. So the last one is going to be reclined hero's pose. And this is really going to help us stretch out those quad muscles, even the hip flexors a little bit. Now that these can get really sore whenever we're doing even cardio, but definitely weightlifting, hip workouts and things like that. So we're going to, as we've hit the back of our legs and the IT band and glute, we're going to hit the front now and do our quads. So as you're sitting in this upright position here with your legs out in front of you, we're going to take one leg. I'm going to start with my left, and we're going to actually bend at the knee, and place the shin bone down on the mat in line with your mat. Make sure your toes are coming out straight from the ankle as well. Now if this is a big stretch for you just sitting here, then you can always stay here seated upright and just be seated with your leg bent, and you might feel that stretch here. If you're not quite feeling it just yet and you want to go farther into this and start to lean back, then we can do that. So we'll just start to walk the hands behind us on the mat. And then we'll start to come down onto the elbows even if you would like to do that. So as we do that, we're going to come down to the opposite elbow first. So I have my left leg bent and I'm going to come down onto my right elbow first. So we're going away from that thigh. And then we'll put the other elbow down. And what I like to do here is just take a few breaths in and out, nice deep calming breaths, just to let my leg kind of get used to this stretch, especially if this is your first time or you're really feeling tight. Just let the body have a minute here to realize that we're stretching pretty deeply, and just let it kind of sink into this a little bit. Now once we've done that, if you're feeling a big stretch here and you're feeling good, then go ahead and stay here. If you would like to go farther, then what we can do is start to come down actually to our back. So first what we're going to do is walk the elbows out to the edge of the mat, just like we did with our shin. And that'll bring us down a little bit farther. So check in there, see how we're doing. And if you feel okay and like you'd like to go down to the mat, then you can go ahead and start to bring those elbows out and actually lay down onto the mat. We'll keep using our breath here. Letting the body know that this is okay, that we're just trying to feel the stretch in the quad. Take a couple more breaths wherever you are in the stretch. Okay, so on our next inhale, if you are laying down on your mat, we're going to go ahead and bring the elbows underneath us and pick the back up off the mat, and we'll come back onto our elbows. And then we'll work our way up to our seated position. So we'll pick up the same sided elbow first to come lean away from that leg. And then we'll push ourselves back up to a seated position. Okay guys, and you can go ahead and release the leg and bring it out front. So that was side one. And we'll go ahead and do the other side as well. So I'm going to take my right leg this time and bend it, lining the shin and foot up with the edge of my mat, just like we did on the other side. And again, you decide here how far you want to go into this today, whatever feels the best for you and your level of tightness and openness for the day. So if you want to go ahead and come down to your elbows, we'll start to walk the hands back on the mat behind us. And then we'll come down onto opposite elbow. So I have right leg bent. I'm going to come down onto left. And then I'll put same side elbow down. Take a couple of breaths here. Give the body a minute to accept this big stretch that we are giving it. Start to let that quad muscle soften and lengthen out. And then if you'd like to go farther and start to lay down on the mat, we'll just let our elbows come out further towards the edge of our mat to start. And if you're still feeling good, then we can start to lower down to where we are laying flat on our mat. And one thing that you might want to do as you're laying in this position is check in with your hip alignment. Sometimes we have kind of a big arch in our low back here, just kind of naturally because we were sitting up first. If that's the case, you can just kind of pick the hips up a little bit and tuck them so that way you're lengthening out your low back, and that might prevent some strain that could potentially happen in this pose. Giving ourselves a couple of breaths. Paying attention to what the quad might feel like in this pose. And then on your next inhale, we'll start to come up. So if you want to, you can actually grab the edge of your mat. That might help a little bit. And you can start to pick yourself up and place your elbows back underneath you. And then from here, we'll pick up the same side that we have bent that elbow first. So we're leaning away. And then we'll push ourselves back up, release that leg back out in front. And there we have it, reclined hero's pose. Now, one thing that I like to do after I do that pose, because like I mentioned, it can be a bit of a strain on the low back, especially if we have trouble kind of tucking the hips under, that I actually like to come into child's pose just to release any tension that might have occurred in my low back. So if you want to do that, you can just swing around here and place your knees onto the mat, about hip distance apart, and then we'll just let the hips sink down towards the knee, or towards the ankles. And then we'll outstretch the arms nice and long, and then you can release head to mat. This is just going to give us a nice kind of round of the back, lengthening out that low back, maybe the mid back, just to make sure that if we did have any strain occurring, that we're kind of reversing that a little bit here. When you are ready, we'll just start to push ourselves back up, hips come up, and then you can come to a kneeling position. Okay guys, so that wraps up our third day of giving our muscles some love and doing some yoga stretches together. If you have any questions about anything that we did today, let me know down in the comments below. I'm happy to help or answer anything that you might have, any questions, concerns. And like I've mentioned in previous videos, once you know how to do these, you can do these at home for longer periods. You can start to incorporate them into your daily workouts after you're all done doing your weightlifting or HIIT workouts. You can do these either at the gym or at home. That way you can reap the benefits while you're doing all of your workouts and getting nice and strong. So I hope that this was helpful. If you like this video, feel free to give it a like or subscribe if you'd like to watch future videos with me. And until next time guys, bye!